Okay, everybody, we're back again. This time we're talking about inequalities. And this is mostly just going to be a review, or at least what should be a review. A lot of us probably forgot about these inequalities, but I have a feeling this one's going to go a little faster. So let's jump into it. First, by looking at our objectives. Two objectives again today, guys. First, I can identify multiple solutions to an inequality on a number line. And then second, I can write an inequality to represent a real world problem. So again, looking at different phrases like we did with expressions and equations. Defining inequalities. Inequalities are different than equations because they could have more than one solution. Another definition for inequality is a number sentence that compares two quantities. Different symbols we use: less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. An example: 6 greater than 5. 6 plus x is greater than 15. A non-example, well, something that's not an inequality. Let's say it's an equation. 6x equals 18, not an inequality. Let's break down these different symbols for some of the different phrases you might see them. For example, this less than, well, obviously it's less than, but it could also be called fewer than or below. If we were to graph this on a single number line, a one variable number line, we would put an open circle on our solution on our number, and we would have the line going towards the left. For greater than, we could call it more than, greater than, or we could call it above. And just like our less than symbol, it's going to be an open circle, but this time it's pointing towards the right. Less than or equal to can also be called at most or no more than. And that's where it gets a little tricky, because less than or equal and at most, sometimes we get those a little confused. So pay attention to that one. At most means less than or equal to. Similar to the less than, but since it's or equal to, we show that by closing the circle of our graph. That means it includes that point on our number line, so it's that point and less. Our last one, we have greater than or equal to, which can also be called at least and no less than. Similar to the less than or equal to, it's another closed circle, but this time we're pointing towards the right because we want this point and all of the ones greater than it. For these number lines and these graphs, this only works if we have variables first. So that's why I'm always going to emphasize variables going first. And let me show you the shortcut if you haven't seen it already. If we imagine these symbols as arrows, this is pointing towards the left. So where does my graph go? Towards the left. This symbol here, as an arrow, points towards the right. So where does my graph go? Towards the right. And it's the same thing with the less than or equal to and the greater than or equal to. So that's one less thing for us to remember if we just keep our variables in front of our inequality symbols. I could graph them really easily. Let's get into some examples. Here's our first example. All we're going to do is take this inequality and graph the solutions. Solutions, plural, because inequalities have more than one solution. This time we're talking about r is greater than 55. So looking at that symbol, greater than, this means open circle. And which direction are we pointing? We're pointing towards the right. So my graph goes open and towards the right. Notice my lazy mathematician number line. I have 0 and then our number in relation to 0. So not super detailed. Let's go to our second example. Still dealing with r. This time we're r greater than or equal to 55. Greater than or equal to means we are closed And which direction are we pointing? We're pointing towards the right. So we want to be at 55, closed, going towards the right. Third example, R is less than 25. So less than, open circle. And which direction are we going? We're going towards the left. So I'm open towards the left. Example number 4, 25 is less than R. We have to pause here for a second. We want our variables to be first. So we're going to switch this around. And there's a little trick when it comes to switching and getting your variable first. When you switch, you also switch your inequality symbol. So it's not going to say less than anymore. It's actually going to say greater than. So we have R greater than 25. Now that I'm here at my variables first, let's focus on that sign. It's just greater than. It's not greater than or equal to. So we keep it open. And it's pointing towards the right. So we go towards the right. So far, so good, right? Let's look at our last example, and there's actually 4 different parts to this example here, but we're taking different phrases, and we're going to write the inequality down, and then we're going to graph that inequality. So here's the first one. We're talking about Caleb. He has at least $5. If you need to, go back in your notes when we were looking at which symbol goes with at least, but then you could write it real easy. I'm going to use C for Caleb, and I'm going to write C is greater than or equal to 5, because at least means greater than or equal to. And now that I have the inequality, I could graph it really quickly. I'm underlined, so I'm closed. I'm or equal to, so I'm closed. And it's pointing towards the right, so my graph goes towards the right. Look at the next one. We're talking about this kid named Tariq. Tariq has more than $5. More than. We might be thinking taffy word, but since we're talking inequalities, it's different. We're just more than. So we want the greater than symbol. I'm going to use T for Tariq, 5 for $5. And since it didn't say or equal to, I don't have to underline it, which means I'm going to have an open circle. And again, I'm pointing towards the right. My third one, I have Vanessa has at most $5. So let's use V for Vanessa. At most, maybe go back to your vocab, to your definitions, but at most means less than or equal to. $5. So at 5, let's put our closed circle. And which direction do we want it to point to? Well, since we're pointing towards the left with our symbol, our graph goes towards the left. Our last one, we're talking about Li Chen. Li Chen has 5 less than $5. Now remember, not expressions, not equations. We're talking inequalities. So we're not talking subtraction here. We're talking the less than symbol. So I'm going to use L, I think, for Li Chen. Yep, L. And I have less than 5. No underline, so I'm an open circle going towards the left. I believe that's it today, guys. So we took our inequalities, quick review. We looked at which direction they go on our number lines. We looked at which symbols had opened or closed circles. And then we looked at which phrases meant the different symbols. Thanks, you guys. Have a good one.